my name is Hannah Mathis, and I'm the president of Repair, which stands for Restoring, Educating, and Preparing Southwest Florida. Our leadership class put together an initiative to create a Zoom forum where we interviewed multiple people that have experience in affordability and sustainability after natural disasters such as Hurricane Ian. Take a look. Hello, everybody. Today, I have the ultimate pleasure of introducing someone who needs no introduction, but I'm still going to make one anyways. This someone has been a tremendous mentor for our class's efforts in advocating for sustainable and affordable solutions towards building back our community after Hurricane Ian. He is professor within the Department of Ecology and Environmental Studies here at FGCU, where he is engaged in multiple research projects, including his most recent, where he has been tagging and tracking alligators with a team of students here on campus. This someone is also a member of the Working Group on Sustainable Development and Communities Coalition. And I think I can speak for everyone in this class when I say he is an amazing, dynamic leader. Without further ado, I'm happy to present Dr. Edwin Everham.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Wow, this feels really formal. And when you started that introduction, I'm thinking, oh, I wonder who they're talking about. I hope I get to meet them. And because I thought this was more broken down into, sort of like an interview, I'm just sitting in my office. I just came in from the field and I have my dog with me. So I hope this isn't too informal for what we're going to do. All right, but I also feel a little bit like I'm defending my thesis. I have a panel in front of me that's about to grill me with questions. Go ahead, you guys.
Hi, so my name is Kristen. We previously have met before, so I just wanted to ask first if there's anything already being done to build back Southwest Florida more sustainably that you are aware of.
Yeah, Kristen, I think the answer is yes. I think that there are multiple efforts. There was a meeting on Tuesday night that I couldn't get into because I was teaching out on Sanibel. There have been some meetings out on Pine Island. There have been some groups that have come together in Collier County. So I think that there is a whole bunch of people that are trying to come together. Now, the beginning of your question was actually about building back, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So one of my concerns is that we're still in recovery mode. I can't believe this. You guys should know the exact date. Are we 6 months out? Are we close to 6 months out?
Just over.
Pardon me, John?
Just over.
Just over 6 months. Yeah, I can't keep track. And it feels like very few people are having the conversation about what are we going to do different as we go forward, and that we're still in the mode of how can we heal? So quick answer to your question, I think there's lots of groups. I don't think it's there's enough interaction and coordination, and that I don't feel like we've moved yet to what the future looks like. Does that work?
Yeah. And I also, just kind of bouncing off of that, I know you're involved with a coalition at FGCU called the Working Group on Sustainable Development and Resilient Communities.
Yeah.
How has that helped to bring insight and possible solutions related to Hurricane Ian and other natural disasters?
How has that group done it? Was that the question?
How does that bring insight and more possible solutions?
Yeah, so I think I'm going to do this for the record. I think, we've talked about this. I can't remember if you've made it to any of the meetings. That particular group was started from somebody from the community that works with the university. And I think he saw the need that I just expressed, that there was a niche, an opportunity, a vacuum for a group to step in and try to coordinate and communicate. That certainly was a way that I thought that group could work. We have met many times. We're still in the process of vetting a post-disturbance survey, and we've had some of our folks go to some of these other public meetings. So that was all in a way to preface, I don't think that our effort has been anywhere near as effective as I hoped. I'll use as my excuse that I didn't think about this coming in 6 months ago, that the need to have people work together and think ahead is really severely impacted by the fact that everybody already has a job to do. And everybody in different degrees has been impacted by the event, which has sort of lowered the reserves of people to get things done. You know, so practically for us, we're taking a bunch of busy people and saying, can we add some more work to your plate while you're trying to clean up your house? And I don't think it worked as well as I hoped it would. I also didn't think 6 months ago that this is where we would be now. You know, it's a much, much longer road to recovery than I imagined. So I'm kind of hoping that my faculty colleagues will limp into the end of the spring semester and that get a little bit of rest, and then maybe we can refocus some energy in May. I think if we're going to have a positive impact on redevelopment and getting better prepared for the next event, we haven't missed the opportunity yet, because I think we're still in repair mode. Well, I didn't mean to riff off of your conference name, but it's a quite brilliant name, right? We're still healing ourselves. I got no idea if I answered that question.
Yeah, you did. I'm glad you kind of explained the lessons that you kind of learned on how you can move forward with that and maybe bring more solutions for the future with that coalition. So thank you.
Yeah, I don't know. I think somebody offered to send me the questions ahead of time, and I realized I might not have the opportunity to read it. So I don't know where else we're going if I'm about to step on somebody's questions. I'm also teaching a 1-credit seminar course called Disaster Response in the Caribbean. And the students that are in that class have picked out countries, they developed bibliographies, and we've been reading papers from the Bahamas, from the Virgin Islands, from Cuba. We included more broadly the Caribbean to be New Orleans and what happened with Katrina. And a takeaway for me, in truth, I don't think I came to this insight until I was thinking about this interview today, was that maybe what's needed to respond to these kinds of events is that initial rush into the area to get people basic needs, and that somebody, I don't know if this is FEMA, and FEMA does have some post-survey or some post-disaster surveys, somebody needs to be staged to come in 6 months later and say, okay, we're through the worst of it. Now, what does the future look like? I don't think FEMA is set up that way, because that's not emergency relief. That's long-term strategic planning. But what I'm getting at, Kristen, is that my expectation that the people who were impacted by the event would have the bandwidth to then be able to both repair and plan for the future, I feel like that was naive in retrospect, and that maybe what we should be organizing on a national or even a global level is sort of stage 2 recovery. Get in there and help people over the hump, but then get in there afterwards and help them adapt so that history is just not going to repeat itself.
So hi, my name is Evelyn. I wanted to ask you a couple questions. Do you know of any other ways Southwest Florida could build back sustainably?
So, Evelyn, I'm a forest ecologist. I study disturbances in ecosystems, and so I think a lot about things like hydro periods and how water flows across the landscape, and vegetative coverage and native biodiversity. For me, I think the biggest challenge, possibly before Ian and certainly after Ian, is housing for people. And I think that we are just at the beginning stages of realizing that a huge portion of the members of our community are no longer going to be able to afford to live here. I don't know how to handle that in a free market economy. You know, that if mostly our housing is being provided by people who are trying to make a living from that housing, then it's good business to focus on the $500,000 homes and above, you know, that the profit margin is more. So I'm struggling with whether the non-market response to that reality is nonprofit organizations like Habitat for Humanity, really being geared up, or whether, and I believe this is part of the answer, whether governments have to step into that market, and that whether that's at the state level, the county level, it could even be something as small as this, which isn't small for us, right? Whether our board of trustees at FGCU should be pushing hard for partnering with people in the community who do development and doing significantly more faculty, staff, and student housing around the university. That I think if we're just going to allow the market to drive housing, you, me, we're going to be trying to find 4 more roommates so that we can afford the rent. And I think this is already happening, and I think I was kind of oblivious to it. I think a tremendous amount of the service labor in Collier County live in Lehigh Acres. And this is the reason why I-75 is so crowded, because they can't afford to live near where they work. So they've got to go far enough north and inland to be able to find affordable housing. And that creates this huge problem with transportation. So, again, let's see, did I answer your question? Rephrase it for me though. Like, what are the other opportunities? Is that the way you said it?
Yeah, like what are the other ways that you can think of, and then you kind of answered my next question too a little bit, was if you think that sustainable solutions could be more affordable, or if it's possible to even build back at all.
Yeah, I'm going to back up on your first question, and don't let me evade your last question, because the second one is tough. The other thing that I think in the reading that I've been doing about similar disaster responses in the Caribbean is that some places get it right and some get it wrong in terms of getting people involved in the conversation. And it appears now that Southwest Florida is getting it right in that sense that, Sanibel brought people together, and Pine Island has brought people together, and groups in Collier have brought people together to figure out what our community needs, and to figure out what the shared vision of where we'd like our community to go and become. We're either in that conversation or we're not. And if we're not in the conversation, we're not part of the community. So more and more, what you guys are doing today, right? You're reaching out to people to ask their opinions. This has to happen weekly. Again, it's something that I would have hoped that the university might have been able to play a role in, but it's not like I got an extra hour in my normal 60-hour work week, that to try to find the time. And you guys must have felt this for class too, right? That you got to do this thing for the conference. You got to do this thing for the conference. Well, yeah, but I'm already working a full-time job and I've got a full-time suite of classes. It's not like more time opened up after Ian. So that was a long rant. The second question, hit that second question to me again so I can frame my answer right.
If you think that sustainable solutions could be more affordable, or if it's possible to build back affordably at all.
Yeah. So I think it's possible to build back affordably. I'm not sure that the free market will drive us towards that. So that's a quick answer to your second question. And then the first question becomes really complex because this word sustainable means different things to different people. That some people would think you're not sustainable unless you have a zero carbon home and it's completely powered by renewable resources. And if you're not there, you're not there, right? But my sense of sustainability, I can sometimes go back to that base, meeting current needs without trading off the future needs. I think a lot about the reality that even with the hurricane, people are going to keep coming here, right? This is a beautiful place to live. We don't have a mechanism within a free political system to put a wall up on the northern border of Florida. We don't. We won't. If we did, we shouldn't. Right? So Florida's population is going to continue to grow. People are going to keep coming here. And we right now are dealing with that, in my opinion, in a relatively piecemeal way. That we decide where the next gated golf course community is going to go, and then we plug it in there. So one definition of sustainable on a landscape scale is not selling $500,000 homes on quarter-acre lots. It's putting in large apartment buildings surrounded by green space so that people would share the natural world rather than just their own backyard, right? It's a different way of living, and I'm not sure people are ready for it. So I believe that you can put more people on this landscape in a sustainable way. I believe that our market forces are not driving us towards that. And I believe that if we are going to get there, it's going to involve some deep conversations amongst the community, and then probably more attention paid to the democratic process and electing the right leaders. Hope that's okay. Hope that was enough.
Awesome, thank you. You answered my questions.
My name's Brooke. I want to thank you for joining us today. Before I get started with my questions,
You're welcome, Brooke.
You kind of touched down on my first question already. My first question was, what are some ways to deal with the market forces continuing at the rate they currently are? And then what do you think that we as a community can do to make these solutions more achievable?
My discipline, ecology, the root of the word is eco. It comes from a Greek word oikos, which means the house. So literally my job is to study the house, and it has the same root as economics, which is to manage the house. But I'm not an economist. And so the first part of your question, I don't have the expertise to answer, but I'm a professor, so that won't stop me from talking, right? The forces that I think are going to shape how we rebuild on this landscape is that some people were driven away, and that's opened up a whole bunch of land. And people are coming from the outside, seeing that as an opportunity. And that in places where some people think we shouldn't rebuild, like some of the barrier islands, I think what we're going to see is that neighborhoods will disappear and be replaced by large resorts. Because people will continue to want to come here. You know what I just said a moment ago about trying to put people in a more concentrated way, that might be viewed as more sustainable than a whole bunch of homes, you know, at low elevation. The other force that I believe is going to drive what happens on this landscape is insurance. You know, that most people have to get a mortgage to be able to buy a home, and you can't get a mortgage unless the bank knows that the thing that they're loaning money for is protected. So you've got to have insurance. I haven't seen the data lately, but I'm assuming that a lot of the companies that were insuring us before Ian aren't anymore. And I'm guessing that there's a lot of people who are depending on insurance checks to repair their roof, or, you know, to rebuild the first floor of their home that was flooded, and they're not going to get them because the companies went out of business. I don't understand enough about banking and mortgages and home development to really understand how that stuff's going to come together. I imagine that there are plenty of people in the world who have the financial resources to not have to take out a mortgage. You know, to go into Sanibel, buy out a home, bulldoze it, build a bigger home, and pay cash, right? So in the absence of any thoughtful long-term planning, I think the market is going to drive us towards gentrification along the coastline, but probably pulled in a little bit because rich people aren't stupid, and you know, and they know this isn't the last storm we're going to have. And then again, the challenge on the landscape is going to be, where are the people going to live who those people are expecting to serve them food at the restaurant, cut their lawns, clean their houses? Wow. Brooke, I didn't realize the question you asked me was so dark. Because I don't have a good answer, right? But that future that I just, you know, rolled out, I don't think I want to live there, right? So I don't remember exactly how you phrased it, but what we absolutely need right now is good leadership in our local governments, in our state government. And I fear we don't have it. And I fear that our current political system drives us toward electing people who are well-funded, and well-funded comes from vested interests, and there aren't enough people with the resources who are really thinking deeply about the future of the landscape. God, I wish I had a better answer than that. Now, all right, so I'll try this for the best spin that I can get. Regardless of how much money you have, you get the same number of votes in an election as anybody else on the screen right now. So if we could find the energy and the time to really concentrate on who we want to help us build back better, maybe we can elect the right people, and maybe we could get to a better place. I have a sense I was unable to answer your question, so I answered a different question.
Down on it. My next question is, what can be done to help Southwest Florida better prepare for future storms like Ian?
I feel like I should have a laundry list by now, 6 months out, when we were involved in that. So, you know, in an abstract, in a philosophical sense, electing people who are ready to guide us into that. But you want something more specific than that, right? So,
However,
yeah, one of the things that will help us is this movement that's happening in FP&L to put power lines below ground. That'll be good. They're doing it in my neighborhood now. They're anticipating a year from now, my neighborhood will have all the power lines underground. I got a chance to talk with one of the guys when he was coming in to lay it out. He says that FP&L believes, I'm gonna try to do this from memory, within 20 years, all of Florida will have their power lines below ground. And so to some people that sounds like, oh my God, we can't wait that long. To me, that was like a joyful thing, because somebody's thinking 20 years ahead, and they're on a path to get us there. So that's cool. Power lines below ground, that will help. To get us better prepared besides that, we do need to talk and think about where people that are at the lower end of our socioeconomic classes are living, and what happens to them when the stuff gets bad again. You know, that having a better mechanism for evacuating people. This is trivial, okay? And so filter this stuff out. Don't put this on the top of my list. But I told you guys, I brought my dog with me today. It was better in Ian and Irma than it was in Charlie. But I think still some people who are told to evacuate don't evacuate because it's not clear to them where they can go with their pets. So taking care of pets in an evacuation is a really tiny, small thing, but it translates to whether people are going to get out of harm's way. And I think it impacts the direct mortality from the storm.
Okay, so I was gonna say, what do you think would be the next step for us as college students when dealing with this issue and these natural disasters? Like, what would be the best thing that we could do?
Individually or in an organized way?
Both.
What you're doing now is good. I wish that you could do this once a month. That's not going to happen. This sounds trite, but it is just true. You know, encouraging everybody to be involved in the political process, paying attention and honoring the gift that we have of a vote, trying to find the right people to be able to do that. One of my classes, I was trying to figure out, you know, this weirdness of you spend time trying to educate people and understanding the landscape that we live on, the landscape that we're part of. And then as soon as you get done, a whole new wave of people have moved in, and you're always behind, right? And trying to help people understand what's unique about Southwest Florida and how we should fit into Southwest Florida. And then I thought maybe you got to get in front of that. So a group of students in my capstone course did a short video project of what you need to know before you move to Florida. And I liked it. I'm in the process of getting the permission from all of them to sort of put that up. Some of it was, you know, really focused, like paying attention to things like heat stroke. And one of them had this beautiful tagline, and I'll probably get it wrong, but I remember it as "Know your backyard." And they were trying to get at the idea that when you move down here, you know, the plants and the animals and the water and the seasons and the weather are all different. So know your backyard, love your backyard, protect your backyard. And I thought, God, that's beautiful, right? So I think students finding their voice and finding the way where their voice can be heard, which I'm increasingly think is through video. Yeah, I guess I get it's really complicated, but anyway, finding a way to speak truth to a larger audience, Kristen, and I think that videos online are a really good way to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, let me add this to that one. This is what's going to happen, and I thought this was going to be true after we had the big dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico. I thought that was going to be true after Katrina. I read that this was true after the Bahamas got hit so bad by the hurricanes there, is that we focus some attention right away, try to get people through the most horrible part of the disaster, and then we move on to the next thing. So in the Bahamas, they felt like their recovery from hurricanes was negatively impacted by COVID. Everybody was focusing on COVID, and they forgot about the hurricanes that hit the Bahamas. I had somebody come into my class, one of my colleagues that lived in South Africa, and in the spring of 2021, there were amazing floods in South Africa, killed several dozen people. And shoot, I'm sorry that I'm being recorded. I don't remember that happening. You know, that we were focused on everything else. So that was a long way of answering your question, Christian, which is to try not to let the next thing capture our attention and forget that we have an opportunity post Ian to do something different and better. And if we don't do something different and better, then we'll have Ian again under some other name. That sounds harsh, and I don't mean it that way. I just mean that I feel like we're still in this. 6 more months from now, we may have forgotten about Ian. And if we forget, then we'll repeat what we did.
Yeah, that's a great point. Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Brooke, I'll go back to yours. And I think yours was, what could you rephrase it? What could we do to prevent?
What could be done to help Southwest Florida better prepare for future storms like Ian?
Okay, thank you. Good. I appreciate that you said better prepare, because it doesn't, in my mind, imply that we'll be able to completely protect ourselves. The climate's changing. It's really difficult to understand what next year is going to look like, what 2 years is going to look like, what 5 years is going to look like. So whatever we do has a high probability of not being enough or being the wrong thing. So I would say this, that I wouldn't have said 7 months ago. The preparation has to partly be aware of this lag of we need help right away, and then we need a different kind of help slightly later, which is to guide us back towards the recovery. And then I wouldn't have added this in. Ian wasn't the first storm that I've gone through. Ian was the worst in terms of mental health. And I think maybe people were prepared. I wasn't. I think you got to get a roof back on your house, and you got to get your power up, which is all true. But more people than I anticipated, including myself, needed and still need help through the stress, the grief, the empathy, exhaustion, you know, of how hard it was for some people. So I'll add on that to prepare for the future, we need a better thoughtful recognition that post-disturbance like this is a mental health crisis, and that we have to be prepared for the mental health crisis in the same way that we're prepared with, you know, power trucks from Missouri that are helping us put our power lines back on. I don't know exactly what that looks like. Should we have busloads of psychologists waiting in Georgia to drive down? You know, I'm making a little bit of a joke of it, but I think people need help, and it's not just that they need food and water. They need help to get through this. I'll add one more, and that one's in one of my top 10s. Might be number one, could be number two. I experienced this. I imagine you guys experienced this, that one of the ways that you get through the initial stress is by helping other people. So I think maybe we don't need this, because I'm amazed at how people sort of organize themselves. And there were groups that you could get a hold of that were going into the worst neighborhoods and helping people get their wet stuff out to the curb so they could be carried away. But I think some effort to organize and coordinate volunteer community response in place ahead of time. I could imagine, Brooke, something like that, where that we've got organized in place people who are going to be responsible for organizing this army of people who come out and say, I need to help someone else. Because if I help someone else, it helps me, right? That happened. It happened in a beautiful way. It happened from my perception, in an unorganized way. Maybe it will always happen, but I feel like trying to think ahead of that for the next hurricane or whatever particular challenge we're going to have.
Can I ask a question real quick?
No, I'm done. Yeah, of course. Go ahead.
Well, my question is, like during the entire, Hurricane Ian, during the entire duration of before, during, and after, what's something that surprised you, whether it be during the in the community, during the process? What's something that surprised you overall?
Yeah, that's a good question, Hannah. And when we hang up the phone, I'm going to have 3 answers to it that I wish I had given. Early on, I was surprised at my own inability to deal with the storm. You know, you guys remember, I don't know if you guys were in town or not. You know, it came in a little bit faster than we thought it would on a Wednesday morning. And I clearly remember by 3 o'clock in the afternoon saying to my wife, I'm done with this movie. Can we leave the theater? You know, that was, I was trying to joke, but it was just so incredibly long. And personally, I had this big tree in the backyard that I probably should have taken out, that we're trying to get out now, that I just lived in fear, not that I was going to fall on my neighbor's house, and I was going to feel horrible about that. So I wasn't my first hurricane. I was surprised by how much stress it was causing. Somebody in my department organized a group chat, and we had probably 18 of us that were in different situations. Some had evacuated to the East Coast, some had evacuated to Orlando, some had evacuated to Tampa. The bulk of us had stayed in town. Some people lived out in Lehigh, some lived on Cape Coral, some lived down in, along Estero Bay. And I was surprised at how cool it felt to be checking in with those people, to just type in, who's got wind now, and that phone-based network of a small community facing the same storm. It surprised me how much that helped. So those two are against one another. And then I'd say, yeah, my best answer to this, Hannah, is I'm surprised by the duration of the mental health problem. And that sounds like a pejorative, that in our society sometimes, people hide if they have to go see a psychologist or something, because there's a embarrassment associated with that. I I don't mean that at all as bad. I'm surprised how bad some people still are and how long it's taken us to try to process this. I'm tired. I got another semester where I feel like I'm just trying to survive the next 2-3 weeks and hope that my teaching in the fall will be better. And that's certainly the way I felt in the fall. And I felt that at least 2 semesters during COVID. And I love my job. I have it's hard to say without choking up, a deep sense of duty and responsibility for what I do. And I don't like it when I don't do it well. I think I'm not the only one. You know, as I talk with my students, I think a lot of my students are still feeling that delayed stress and they're just trying to get through. So that surprises me that it's taken us this long to bounce back. I don't know exactly why. Okay. So Brooke, this should have been on my top 10 immediately, and I'm sorry it wasn't. I'm glad that John brought it up. This idea as we build forward of honoring green infrastructure. So mangroves do minimize interior damage. And one of the reasons that our campus did so well, both in Ian and Irma, and I'll go all the way back to Charlie, is that about half of our campus is conservation lands. And so when you pour rainfall on our campus, the ponds fill up and they overflow into the conservation lands, and they don't flood the roads and they don't flood the buildings, right? We could build better with more green space in place to buffer us from whatever the future is going to hold. And I've been saying anytime that I had a media camera in front of me that we have to put more mangroves on our coastline. And there's a thing in ecology where we talk about restoration, like putting it back the way it used to be. And what I'm saying now is we don't need to put mangroves where they were 50 years ago, because that's probably too deep of water now. We need to put mangroves where they'll need to be 5 years from now, which is going to be further inland, you know, as sea level rises. So yeah, please do include on my, that what I should have said was the green infrastructure as part of what we can do better. And then I want to go back to one of the first questions about my group. And I meant to say this and I missed it. One of the things that happened when we brought this group together was, what do we need to do? And the answer to that question was diverse. Close to a majority of people, because we're faculty and we have expertise, had opinions about what's wrong on this landscape and what needed to be done different. And I went in thinking that we would be writing a paper that was how to build back better in Southwest Florida. And a significant number, but a minority of people said, shut up, you pointy-headed intellectuals. You can't tell people what they need. You have to ask them where they're at and what they think they need. And so that derailed this whole effort, because some people wanted to go right into answer mode and some people wanted to go into ask mode. And we never really healed that breach. And I honestly think one of the things that'll happen this summer is I'll try to bring the people back who wanted to create some recommendations and say, well, let's go ahead and do that. And then if there's somebody out there that wants to listen to our recommendations, we'll have them. But I'm hoping that what's going to come forward in the next couple of months is that survey that goes out and says, where are you at? What do you need?
Thank you so much for sharing, Professor Everham. We really appreciate you coming in today to talk about
Oh,
this.
you're very, very welcome. Thank you guys for putting this together, right? This is part of it. We just got to talk to each other. We got to hear what's happening to other people. We got to figure out where do we want to be next year and 20 years from now.